Let's introduce Kuhner Fierdersdorf. Kuhner, thank you for coming on the Kuhner Show.
Thanks for having me.
It takes a lot of guts, my friend, to get into the ring with me. I haven't lost too many of these, but we'll see how well you do. Ray, get the clock ready. Kuhner, tell us why the Ground Zero Mosque should be built. Go, baby.
Well, I think first it's clear that the people that want to build the mosque have a legal right to do it. And what we got into an argument about in print, you suggested that if the mosque is built, it will be a signal that America is surrendering in the war against radical Islam. That's almost a direct quote. And while I didn't call your view bigoted, I did call it scaremongering. And I think the reason that it's scaremongering is that, Sharia law, contrary to what you write, is not in any danger of coming to fruition in the United States. I'm sure that some of your conservative listeners have liberals that they argue with, maybe at the family dinner table or maybe at work. I defy any of them to find anyone among their friends and family who want Sharia law to be implemented in the United States. If this mosque is built, and they have the legal right to do it, I'm ambivalent about whether they do it or not, but if it is built, it's nothing to worry about. It's a case of a religious group that is going to build a structure and worship in it and have a community center there, and it's one of these media firestorms that is just going to go away once it's built, whether it's built 2 blocks from Ground Zero or whether it's built 12 blocks from Ground Zero or 20 blocks from Ground Zero. We're all going to forget about it. And, if there's a mosque near Ground Zero that does have radical preaching in it, it's going to be like the most visible mosque in the world. It's not as if the FBI or law enforcement can't handle it, should it turn out to be a radical mosque. But there's no evidence for that proposition. And because there's no evidence for that proposition, we should focus on the actual threats posed by radical Islam.
Kuhner, let me take a couple of your points. First of all, if you do read your blog posting, I can quote to you verbatim. You call me a wolf crying Islamophobe, which is basically saying I'm a bigot. Now, that's the thing I find stunning, is that when you deal with people who support the creation of the mosque or who engage in debate with people who criticize the building of this mosque, they don't argue the facts. They go for motives. They smear. They do what many on the left do when they deal with Tea Party members or conservative critics of Obama. They say you're a racist or you're a bigot. So they never deal with the facts of what you're actually saying. Now let's get to the facts of the matter. You say nobody's calling for the creation of Sharia law in America. That's not true. All you have to do is look at Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf's own writings. Not in English. Yes, in English. He calls for cross-cultural understanding, interfaith dialogue. But when he talks to the Arabic media, in his books that are translated not in English but in foreign languages, he has explicitly, openly, repeatedly, consistently said, I want America to have Sharia tribunals. This mosque is about pushing Sharia law in the United States of America. He has also said that America was an accessory to the attacks of 9/11, meaning we brought it upon ourselves. He has refused to condemn Hamas. He, in fact, refuses to condemn it as a terrorist organization. Hamas has called for the mosque to be built. So, in other words, if you look at Europe, if you look at Canada, if you look at other liberal multicultural societies, Sharia law is flourishing, Sharia tribunals have taken hold, and what they're trying to do by the building of this mosque, there's no getting around it. It's now Hamas has said it, many Muslim radical groups have said it, Imam Faisal has said it in Arabic. This will be a triumph of the conquest of radical Islam over America.
First, I want to point out that I call you an Islamophobe in my article, someone who is unduly afraid of Islam. I do not call you a bigot. There's a different meaning for that word. Second of all, I really want to push back against this notion that Sharia law has any realistic chance of coming to fruition in the United States. Sharia law, in the way you're using the term, is a system of Islamic law that actually becomes the law of a country. How many votes do you think that would get in the Senate? How many senators right now would support voting Sharia law? The answer is 0 senators. How many people in the House of Representatives would support it? It requires more than 200 people to get something passed into law in the House of Representatives, and not a single person in the House of Representatives would introduce legislation to introduce Sharia law. I mean, if you look at how it would actually have to happen, how it would play out, it's evident that it is scaremongering to say that this has any realistic chance of happening. The American people wouldn't stand for it. There is literally no political support for it in this country. You can't even pass a anti-gay marriage ballot amendment. You can't even pass an anti-gay marriage law without it being struck down by the courts. And you think that the courts are somehow going to permit the stoning to death of adulterous women? It's just, it doesn't make any sense. It's, another thing that you say in your column is that you would be, no one is saying that people can't build mosques anywhere except for Ground Zero. And I think this is really a contradiction. It's like you say that this is a threat, that if they build it 2 blocks from Ground Zero, but if they build it 20 blocks from Ground Zero, it's not a threat anymore. It's like a location-based prejudice that doesn't make any sense. And I understand that some of the 9/11 families' victims are upset that it's going to be built near Ground Zero, and I'm sorry for them. But it doesn't make any sense to say that if a mosque is in one location as opposed to another location, then it is somehow going to be more dangerous.
Points there, Kuhner. Okay, one, I am not an Islamophobe, and that's the thing. The critics always use that. I have no fear of Islam. What I do oppose is radical Islam. If I was an Islamophobe, why did I support the creation of democracy in Iraq? Why do I support the liberation of Afghanistan? Why do I support moderate Muslims in Lebanon? Why do I support the overthrow of the mullah regime in Iran? So that to me is a red herring. What I do oppose is radical Islam. As for the mosque itself, yes, its location is everything. The site of 9/11 is hallowed sacred ground. It was the acts that were committed on that day was an act of war, a massive atrocity committed in the name of Islam by 19 Muslim extremist hijackers. So to me, the location of the mosque is everything in this debate. When people talk about religious freedom, there are 1,200 mosques in America, 30 mosques in New York City. There could be, Governor David Patterson today openly came out and said, there is state land we will provide for this community center and this mosque to be built in a residential area. This mosque can be built, but they insist on building it near Ground Zero, 600 feet away, and they want to call it Cordoba House, based after the city in southern Spain where radical Islam in its time during the Middle Ages conquered Spain, destroyed a church, and built a grand mosque as a symbol of conquest. So they know the buttons that they're pushing. They know what they're trying to do behind all of this. Now, as for the investigation of the mosque, we had a radical mosque in Northern Virginia. 2 of the 9/11 hijackers attended it. If it is a radical mosque, as I believe it will be if you look at the sayings of this imam, then there will be some surveillance, and they may have to shut it down. That's for authorities to decide. But the site of 9/11, no way.
I don't think that your position makes sense. You say that this is hollow sacred ground at Ground Zero. Of course, they're not building at Ground Zero. They're building 2 blocks away. But even if 2 blocks away from Ground Zero in a former Burlington coat factory is hollowed sacred ground, they're building on hollowed sacred ground. Well, maybe that would upset people, but saying it's hollowed sacred ground isn't an argument that it's going to be more radical than if it was located somewhere else. It's not an argument that locating it there is going to bring about Sharia law. There's no logical connection between those things. It's not like, oh, you build a mosque on hollowed ground, therefore Sharia law. No, Sharia law is a different thing. It's a system of laws that people implement, and I don't understand why you're conflating building on hollowed ground with somehow Sharia law coming about.